Hello everyone. So I am back with my new video which is Civil Disobedience. This is an essay by David Henry Thoreau. So we will cover the following contents. First is David Henry Thoreau, who was he? Next, how Thoreau thought to write this essay. Next is what is civil disobedience, and next is critical analysis of civil disobedience. And at last we will discuss the conclusion also. So here we go. First is David Henry Thoreau. Who was he? See, he was born on 12 July 1817 in Concord, Massachusetts, US, and died on 6th May 1862 at the age of 44 in Concord, Massachusetts, US. Alma mater was Harvard College. Era was 19th century philosophy. Reason was Western philosophy, and school was transcendentalism. His main interests were ethics, poetry, religion, politics, biology, philosophy, and history. His notable ideas were tax resistance, civil disobedience, direct action, environmentalism, anarchism, and simple living. Notable works were Walden, Civil Disobedience, Walking, Cape Cod, Life Without Principles, and Wild Apples. See, here are some quotes by him. Go confidently, it is the direction of your dreams. Live the life you have imagined. And the next is, things do not go change, we change. This is a very powerful quote by him. Next, how Thoreau thought to write this essay. We all think that why an author write any kind of thing or any kind of his creation. So here the answer is, in July 1846, the sheriff arrested and jailed Thoreau for his tax delinquency. Someone, probably a relative, anonymously paid Thoreau's taxes after he had spent one night in jail. This incident prompted Thoreau to write his famous essay Civil Disobedience, which was originally published in 1846 as a resistance to civil government. See, this was all politics actually. That sheriff arrested him, and when he started protesting protesting that government, so that's why they took strict actions against Thoreau. What is civil disobedience? Now we will see what is the title of that essay. Civil disobedience can be defined as refusing to obey a law, a regulation, or a power judged unjust in a peaceful manner. Civil disobedience is therefore a form of resistance without violence. Focus on the words resistance without violence, because here there is no violence done by him, but actually it was a non-violent action which is shown in his essay. Critical analysis of civil disobedience. Now here are some points, actually these are 10 points. We will discuss all these one by one. First is war. We will critically analyze the whole essay. War. In 1846, the United States declared war against Mexico. Thoreau and other northern critics of the war viewed it as a plot by Southerners to expand slavery into the Southwest. Thoreau had already stopped paying his taxes in protest against slavery. The local tax collector had ignored his tax evasions but decided to act when Thoreau publicly condemned the US invasion and occupation of Mexico. Next, disobedience. The Thoreau's minor act of defiance caused him to conclude that it was not enough to be simply against slavery and the war. A person of conscience had to act. In civil disobedience, he proclaimed an activist manifesto. In other words, when a sixth of the population of a nation, which has undertaken to be the refuse of liberty, are slaves, and a whole country, which is Mexico, is unjustly overrun and conquered by a foreign army and subjected to a military law, I think that is not too soon for honest men to rebel and revolutionize. Not to pay taxes. It is an idea by Thoreau himself. Thoreau argued that the government must end its unjust actions to earn the right to collect taxes from its citizens. As long as the government commits unjust actions, he continued, conscious individuals must choose whether to pay taxes or to refuse to pay them or defy the government. By not paying his taxes, Thoreau explained He was refusing his allegiance to the government. In fact, he wrote, "I quite declare war with the state." Means he has told clearly that I can declare war against the state, but I will not pay taxes. And this is why maybe um, he was drawn to jail actually. Next is raise voice against unjust laws. It is also a quote by him. Thoreau declared that if the government required people to participate in injustice by obeying unjust laws, then people should break the laws even if they ended up in prison. Means he is saying to every person, every citizen of his country, that you should raise your voice against unjust laws even if you end up in the jail, like me. Means like Thoreau. Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, he arrested. The true place for just men is also a prison. Citizens should resist oppressive laws. And this is a quote by him, that resistance is the highest form of patriotism. This is also one of the famous quote by him. Next, not to tolerate. There are the people who passively tolerate the status quo, merchants and farmers in Massachusetts who are not willing to fight for justice at any cost. Many argue that the majority of US citizens would be unprepared for the societal changes that slavery would bring about. Thoreau responds to this by saying that we need only a few wise people to educate the majority and thus prepare them to these changes. There are thousands of people who oppose slavery and war with Mexico and yet do nothing, or waiting for others to take action. Means they are against a government but they do not take any action. So it is the passive waiting that Thoreau condemned. Next, individualism. One of the most important themes throughout Thoreau's work is the notion of individualism. Deeply skeptical of the government, Thoreau objects the view that a person must sacrifice or marginalize her values out of loyalty to her government. Furthermore, he argues that if an individual supports the government in any way, even by simply respecting its authority as a government, then that person is complicit in injustice forwarded by the government. This lays an extremely heavy responsibility on the individual to compromise, negotiate, or passively accept it, to betray one's integrity and commit a crime. But consider how unstable a community would be if followed this viewpoint. Can a society function if everyone is a man first and subject afterwards? But even if Thoreau's principles does become implausible when universalized, does this mean that it can't pertain to a particular person's actions? Thoreau would say no. Indeed, Thoreau know that not everybody was going to follow his individualistic values, understood as either uh, imprudent or brave. There will never be a really free and enlightened state until the state recognizes the preeminence of individual. He is saying that overall he wants to say in this essay that we all should know, we all should accept ourselves, each other as individual, because the power of individual is also a next level power in this universe. Next, voting is not a solution. He says that he does not believe that voting is a proper solution. A wise man will not leave justice to the chance of a majority vote. The majority will end up voting their interest, voting for what will benefit them. A principled person must follow his conscience. Furthermore, nowadays there are no people who vote independently of what their political parties tell them to do. There are almost no men in America, according to Thoreau. He complains of people's lack of intellect and self reliance, as well as their complacency. Voting is effective means of change, feeble expression. See, he is saying that we can't means rely on government. If we have voted them, we should know what is right for us and what is wrong for us. Next, responsibility. Thoreau writes that a person does not have a duty actually to eliminate wrongs, even the most serious wrongs. A person may legitimately have other goals and pursuits. However, at the very least, a person must wash his hands of injustice and not to be associated with something that's wrong. He asserts, if I devote myself to others' pursuits and contemplations, I must first see at least then I do not pursue them sitting on another man's shoulders. Thus, it is hypocritically for a person to commend a soldier for refusing to fight in an unjust war while that same person continues to sustain the unjust government that is pursuing the war. Citizens should need arises when citizens should when need arises. There are 999 patrons of virtue to one virtuous man. You know, he wants to let us know our responsibility as citizens. Next is machine of government. See, Thoreau then returns to the metaphor of government as machine of government, as government of machine. He says that if an injustice is a part of the necessary friction of a machine of government, then it should be left alone. Perhaps the machine will wear smooth. In any case, it will eventually wear out if the injustice has its own spring, rope, or pulley. Then one must consider whether the remedy is worse than the injustice. However, if the government requires one to be an agent of injustice towards another, then Thoreau says that one must break that law. Means we should break that law, but we should not follow like this. He argues the reader to be a counter friction to the machine and not to participate in the wrong. Next, lawyers and legislators. Thoreau then writes that he doesn't have patience for lawyers and legislators standing within political institutions. They never critically look at these institutions and therefore can't reform them. He speaks of Daniel Webster, saying that these politicians fails to make fundamental reforms of government. However, compared with other politicians and reformers, Webster is the only sensible one. He is not a leader but a follower, and his actions are defensive, not aggressive. He supports slavery because it is in the original compact of the US. Thus, he doesn't have wisdom but only prudence. Next but not the least, conclusion. This is how we understand how Thoreau raised a voice in civil disobedience and also how this fits in present scenario. So thank you for now and bye.